Lord of murder shall perish, but in his doom he shall spawn a score of mortal progeny. Chaos will be sown from their passage. So, saith the wise Londo.
Hi there, I'm Cameron.
And I'm Danny.
And welcome to Mages and Murderdads, episode 13.
Lucky 13.
Lucky number 13. So lucky that they often name the 12th floor 13 minus 1 in a hotel.
Yeah, no, it's a true statement.
That's maybe the worst intro I have ever done.
Yeah, let's just keep going there.
We're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going.
In El Salvador, they skipped 13 because of the infamous street gang.
MS-13?
Yeah, and they also skip 18 because of the other infamous street gang.
MS-18?
No, Barrio 18.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so it goes 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19.
Wow.
When on like street addresses. Mm-hmm. So here we are. We're getting off to the good start here.
Mm-hmm. This is a podcast about Baldur's Gate.
If you hadn't guessed already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Baldur's Gate franchise. We are 2 episodes into our second season, kind of informal seasons, and we're talking about Siege of Dragonspear. If you haven't listened to previous episodes, why don't you go back and do that?
We've reached the point where you just can't start here.
Every episode is an onboarding episode.
Yeah, we're doing our best here, but man, it's just going to be so confusing if you try to do that.
It will be. So you should just go listen to those 12 hours of content before this one. Yeah. What a great time. We've done a really good job. A really good job.
Mm-hmm. Jobs too.
Mm-hmm. So if you haven't watched the show before, what you are seeing on the screen might not be related to what we're talking about. It is more of a helpful reminder of the beauty of Baldur's Gate. Sometimes it is related. Our wonderful theme song is created by Brian Taylor. He created this season's theme song, and the beautiful renditions of our characters, Balthazar and Ticklevar, were created by @SilverSkin on Twitter. You can see a link to her thing in the description below.
Yeah.
You should like us on Facebook. You should hit like and subscribe here on YouTube. That helps us out if you even remotely like this content. And if you have loved this amazing intro so far, and you can also support us on Patreon and you can buy us a cup of coffee a month.
Yeah, and if you're on the fence about subscribing, I want to ask you a question. You've already listened to at least a minute of this. Would you do that for all the other nonsense on the homepage of YouTube? Because that's where this is going to end up. If you hit subscribe, we'll come to the homepage of YouTube. This is probably better than most of that stuff. I mean, let's face it, right?
Mm-hmm. Content creators.
Yeah.
Number 1, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
We're just as good. Number 2, PewDiePie.
Mm-hmm.
We're double as good because we're 2 people.
Yep.
Number 3, that guy who crushes stuff with a hydraulic press.
Yeah. He's going to run out of stuff eventually. There's only so much stuff.
That's the only way we win, though, is when he runs out of stuff.
Yeah.
We have to hope he runs out of things to destroy with a press before we run out of Baldur's Gate games.
Well, I know, but this is the problem, right? He's the Ouroboros. Eventually, if he's about to run out, he could just, take all of our podcasts, put them on a flash drive, and then crush that.
He could also crush the press itself.
Yeah.
So, Danny, if Baldur's Gate was not a computer RPG, in this kind of isomorphic tradition, a WRPG, if you will, Western RPG, then what genre would it be?
Specifically, what video game genre, I guess.
What kind of video game would it be? If you could fit Baldur's Gate into the aesthetic and mechanical trappings of another video game genre, what genre would that be?
Well, I think based on our experience in Baldur's Gate 1, a very compelling pitch would be almost a Civ-like strategy game where you take the role of the Iron Throne, and your job is to coordinate various mercenary bands, various economic trends, gaining the favor of certain diplomatic houses, and really, like, the game is about setting into effect, like, the Rube Goldberg mechanisms to start war with and get your stock prices up. I think that's a very compelling game that I just described.
So it'd be a little bit like, or you're kind of describing a little Civ, but also a little bit Crusader Kings, like a little bit of that, and maybe a little bit of King of Dragon Pass.
Ooh, I haven't played that one.
Oh, you know what? We might need to play that and make some videos one day. It's kind of a choose-your-own-adventure strategy resource management game. It's a little bit of everything. If listeners have not checked that out, it's on GOG, and it's on a couple other services too. But
so do you think what I just described, is that closer to Crusader Kings, or is it closer to Solaris?
Or
Stellaris.
Stellaris.
Yeah.
Basically the same game.
Okay.
Made by the same studio.
Crusader Kings certainly closer to the Baldur's Gate aesthetic, given that its aliens aren't really Gith around, not in the game, but in the universe.
Yeah, the Githyanki.
And the Gith other kind.
Githrazi.
There you go.
Githrazi. By the way, this is in no way like a real advertisement, but I've been looking at Volo's guide for Monstros. The new D&D thing, and that thing's super cool. The Gith are in there. There's like a whole thing on Illithids and the Gith and all that. Very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah,
I think you were. Did you pitch this last episode?
I might have. I've literally been reading it like a book.
Awesome. So
I'm
certainly
a big
more
old D&D nerd.
More engaging than Shadowdale.
Hey.
Oh.
So I think. I agree. I think that's a great way of doing it. I think a very obvious answer is Gauntlet-style action game. Because there is one. There's Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance.
Fun game.
Which we have played. We have played Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance a whole lot.
Yeah. Like, when it was appropriate to play, not necessarily nostalgically.
Yeah. Because it's fun.
It's just a fun little time. What about, do you think a first-person kind of Fallout or Skyrim? No?
None of that. I think it should be a bullet hell game.
A bullet hell game?
There's wizards, and they show up in their magic missiles. Melts minute meteors. People with haste. People with slow. People with sleep. People with blind. Wizard war. So, yeah, Forgotten Realms, Baldur's Gate, affiliated bullet hell game. That's my vote.
And so instead of so all the plot exposition is just in between levels. Like there's like getting to Candlekeep. Oh, here's that guy with the elven arse, and then you get to the end and you open a chest and it's like, oh, you're the son of Baal, and then on to the next one.
And literally at the end, Sarevok shows up and he says, I am on the verge of becoming a god. And he goes through 8 stages. And then the game is over.
Hey.
And you have to use like a bunch of continues to get there.
I like the pitch. You're a game maker. Make it.
All right. Well, everybody, I need a little bit of, I need like $500,000.
Yeah. And permission.
Well, I feel like if you come with the money.
Yeah.
The permission's the easy thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I would do. All right, well, if anyone wants to make this Iron Throne simulation game or my bullet hell game, reach out. We're available.
Yeah, and for enough money, we'll certainly give you permission to act on your desires.
So we played Siege of Dragonspear, and we kind of started it last episode, did the opening gambit of a dungeon.
Yeah.
And now we're hanging out in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
We're back to the city of our youth.
Back in the old ducal palace. Lots of good memories there.
Back in the USSR.
Remember all the good time memories you had of that fight in the foyer with those doppelgangers?
I do. You know what? Let's reminisce for a moment. All right, I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done reminiscing.
Are you going to make it cut to that footage, or is it just going to be a black screen?
You know what? They'll find out.
Okay. They will have already... They know sooner than I do.
Oh. So what are we doing at the Ducal Palace?
And we're waking up. from the nightmare that was all the other episodes. You were the prince all along.
So there's an interesting thing that happens here where there's a time jump.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this weeks after the last episode?
It's a certain amount of time. I think that if we paid more attention to the, we'd probably have a better idea if I read the text of the beginning chapter, right?
Of the exposition.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But no, it is not like you get back from Corlaz's tomb, family tomb, and they're like, okay, we're starting right now. No, there is a certain amount of time that passes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so you wake up, and your adopted sibling, Imoen, is there.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, hey, what are you up to, buddy?
Yeah. More or less, the first thing she says is, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on. She kind of alerts us to how weird the geopolitical situation is here in Baldur's Gate. She makes some references to some instability into the Crusade, right?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing when a game like this, which is, isometric, you're very far away from the action, right? It's kind of like watching game board pieces move around. When that kind of game tries to make its violence and its political scenario like super present and important and fast, you know what I mean? Like when it tries to become a political thriller without any of the maneuvers that, say, a novel has to end a chapter on a cliffhanger. Oh, we don't know if Tom Clancy's hero is going to make it. We don't know if Ian Malcolm's dead, right? That kind of thing.
Don't you think a lot of this is just linked to the fact that the camera is so far out, it's so hard to actually relate to these beings?
Yeah, I do. And so that's the weird thing, right? Is when it's trying to have a lot of empathy and a lot of speed-based concern, right? So as if this was an episode of 24, but for little mice running around. And so it's weird that this scene where Imoen wakes us up and, oh no, the ducal palace is maybe under attack. There's weird stuff happening. That's supposed to be really present and oh shit.
There's a sense of urgency we're supposed to feel.
Yeah, but there's no urgency whatsoever. For me, at least.
Yeah, it was more or less that. I was kind of really hankering to stroll about the town and see some side quests, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. But so you wake up, you walk out, and Imoen gets slayed by assassins.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah, it's a real traumatic event.
Mm-hmm. So how'd you feel about that?
I was pissed off. I was angry. I didn't, look, I'm not the biggest Imoen fan.
Yeah.
I'm speaking as Balthazar right now.
Mm-hmm.
But Imoen, look, I don't want to be her bestest best friend. But these, I've got my little room here, and these people did not have permission to be there. I never granted that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, man. It's just really frustrating to finally envision a future where I don't have to deal with people, and to have more people come into my world.
And theoretically, you've had weeks of not dealing with people.
Yeah, and it was finally getting good.
It's finally making your way through the third season of The Wire.
Yeah.
You're getting to the meat of it. You're starting to see how all the pieces fit.
Yeah, and we're finally past that Doc Union bullshit, and I'm like, okay, let's we're getting to some really interesting stuff, and this happens.
Ugh, it's pretty messed up. So Imoen just gets laid out brutally.
Poisoned,
and then this person Corwin shows up. It's warrior woman.
Mm-hmm.
I guess she's part of the Flaming Fist.
Yeah, that's kind of my read.
Mm-hmm. And she shows up and she's like, "Oh, we gotta kill these assassins. They're assassins. They're after you."
Yeah.
Player name.
Mm-hmm. Which you can read a note on the ground that is a crude depiction of the protagonist. That's more or less what the note says.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna put up a visual representation of that.
Yeah,
right here.
Okay.
And so basically this is all just a way of being hey, this Kalar Regent person, Argent.
Mm-hmm.
Kalar Argent? God, that's a fantasy name. Belt. I long for the days of Belt.
You long for the days of Belt.
Yeah.
Or
I
even
don't know.
Duke Elton John.
Yeah, Duke Elton John, the most French man in human history. His audio stuff is just like a stereotype of a Frenchman from the
It's so
70s.
French, the audio crackles. Like almost like, you know how if you yell into a mic, it's just the mic can't take it? It's not volume that's causing it to crack, it's just Frenchness.
But so MON gets knocked out. There's mystic poison, which gets actually stated there is mystic poison on the assassin's blades.
Some real Lord of the Rings stuff going on.
It really is. It's some very non-compelling world building. This is a world where it's the Forgotten Realms is a very robust place of lore. There are 500 and something different pieces of fiction. There's games, there's source books, there's all kinds of stuff. And for this game to be so fine-grained in its world building and to be just it's shut up, it's mystic poison, okay?
Yeah.
Just get out of here. Get going.
To the point where you could legitimately have a 20-minute conversation on a podcast about your favorite spirit wine or ale in the Forgotten Realms. And you at least make something up. It's Omnian. It's oh my god, this is from Luskan. This is obviously Luskan gut rot. This is what was on that dagger. But no.
Yeah, so what's going on in the wider world? Corwin says, we need to get ready. We've got to go kill Argent.
Yeah. Well, she leads us to the Dukes, and the Dukes are like, we need to take care of this, because the larger context of this is there is a straight-up refugee crisis in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
All of these people from the north have, flooded into Baldur's Gate as a refuge. If you take a step outside the Ducal Palace, there's a gargantuan crowd, and it is pretty cool what they've been able to do with the animations and with the engines, because they've got the guards swinging their swords, and it kind of gives this idea of they're just barely keeping this crowd of desperate people at bay. That's kind of the larger context of what's happening in the city. And once again, there is a bit of a remove, it is a bit jarring, because you're supposed to feel claustrophobic and surrounded, and maybe that's a little harder to do with a bird's eye view, but there are certain points where you're trying to leave the Ducal Palace and you're actually having difficulty trying to find a path out because of all of these people.
Yeah, and they're just kind of milling around and doing stuff. Yeah, there's something interesting about show don't tell here, in the sense of the game has to rely on both of those things. It can show you all of the characters, but in the event that you don't get stuck, right, and it's easy to run through the thing, you've got Corwin walking around and saying things like, get out of my way, the chosen one of Baldur's Gate is with me. So it's an interesting kind of give and take there.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just some interesting stuff. So the stage is set. We've already, in the first few minutes of the chapter, we've been attacked by people. It is clear the source of where the attack came from. So they've struck at a beloved character, or at least an intended to be beloved character. So you've already got all the character motivation you need, and the archdukes are basically said, hey, you may need to take care of some stuff before you go out on the road. Do they even give us a choice of whether we go on the road? I mean, I said I would do it. I'm pretty sure in a dialogue option.
I'm assuming you could be no, but I didn't.
Yeah, so we have no clue what happens. I mean, I don't think the game happens.
It cuts to credits. It says, thank you for playing. You've solved all war and all crises. We should look to you for all of our political engagements in the future.
Yeah,
love Beamdog.
It's kind of like the beginning of Until Dawn. Sometimes the best thing to do is nothing at all.
It's true.
Oh boy. Yeah. So
now it's really the opportunity to do two things. Number one, getting the gang back together.
Sure.
Number two, a bunch of side quests that are unrelated to that. And that's kind of what we do or at least that's all that I did for the rest of this play session. I kind of wandered around, and it gives you kind of a truncated map of Baldur's Gate. There's maybe 5 areas that you can go to.
Yeah.
And they're slightly different in their angles. So it's like locations that we've already been to in the other game, or in the previous game, but they're like rendered slightly differently. They're redrawn completely, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, we can go to like the Three Kegs Tavern, the Elf Song Tavern, the Iron Throne, and the Flaming Fist headquarters.
Yeah.
And each of those places has some people we can talk to and some quests to do.
And ostensibly people we can recruit, but not necessarily.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So who did you talk to anybody? You didn't even try to recruit anybody?
I did not try to recruit anybody. I think I talked to most people, but there's always dialogue options that are like either non-committal. There are some dialogue options that are like very explicit. Join me. I need your help. Mm-hmm. And there are others like, well, you seem nice seeing you. I hope you have a fun time here in Refugee Central. And those, I just went with those. I went with the latter every time. Mm-hmm. But I think my favorite location had to be the Elf Song Tavern. It just seemed like it had the densest kind of stuff going on in it.
Well, tell me about that. What does that look like?
So like Hunzelman was saying, it's a truncated map. It's kind of like, let's just cut all of the fat out of this map and we'll make them. And like everything that is included is just going to have guaranteed content, which wasn't necessarily the case in Baldur's Gate 1, right?
There was a lot of like nothing.
Yeah, you would go into a house and you're like, maybe this is like going to be a cool side quest. Maybe it's just going to be somebody who asked me to please leave and there's nothing going on in here, which I think we're going to talk about that kind of distinction towards the end in terms of gameplay. But I stumbled upon a group of nobles that were very obviously planning a coup.
Yeah, I did too. I also stumbled there. They were actually. I don't think this was in the Elf Song. I think this is in the other one.
Was that in the kegs?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't remember.
But anyway, yes.
How'd you handle that?
I said, "Hey there. I tend to like Belt and Duke Elton, and the other Grand Duke who died in my initial game. I guess I just rezzed her back to life.
Yeah,
she has I had her name written down. Mm-hmm. It's much longer, but anyway. But yeah, I was like, I like them. And they're like, will you let me go? And I was like, no, this ends here. And they are straight up civilians. Like, they don't fight
You
back.
fought them?
Oh, heck yeah, I fought them.
Wow.
Pure justice. Mm-hmm. I'm the protector of Baldur's Gate. Ticklevar, so Balthazar, right, has always had like a strong independent spirit.
Sure.
I think that's been like a prime motivator for you as we play this game. I think that Ticklevar has a strong like community spirit, and maybe that's going to his head a little bit.
I mean, you can interpret that from Ticklevar, and this might be me projecting onto Ticklevar, but I just see someone in dire need of the protection of the state, given how long it took you to do some of these fights. And so you are supporting the state as much as possible.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? Like Ticklevar believes in like the collective mind and how good it can be. Mm-hmm. But doesn't really recognize that he is like becoming a transcendent god being, right? Mm-hmm. And so the measure of personal power versus community power is different than it once was, but Ticklevar doesn't really realize that.
I gotcha.
Mm-hmm. I think that's how I'm playing Ticklevar currently. So yeah, no, we fought. Ticklevar summoned minute meteors and then just threw them at people.
Mm-hmm. Well, anything interesting? Did they have like notes on them or anything?
They had a note. One was like, "Let's hang out." Yeah, it was like the conspiracy note. Mm-hmm. And they had a bunch of gold, like 250 gold total.
Interesting.
So what did Balthazar do?
Yeah, so I wasn't as confrontational as that interest, but I mean, you got to look at motivations, right? Like, Balthazar doesn't have nearly as much loyalty to, like, the bureaucracy of Baldur's Gate. Mm-hmm. And I kind of, like, was pretty ambivalent, but I didn't have much, like, ambivalent messages, like, or, like, responses I could give, right? There were a lot of, like, very, very strong responses, and in terms of, like, well, go turn yourself in right now downstairs. Mm-hmm. and all otherwise like, well, no, I totally support you. I'm in on it, which would have been interesting, but like that's politics is not Balthazar's bag either way. So I just like picked what I thought was a neutral one, and it ended up where they just like gave me a bunch of gold and left.
You think they're going to kill Duke Belt?
Well, they gave me a bunch of gold, and they gave me a pair of magic boots that increased my charisma.
Oh, I got that too. They give you a charisma +1?
Yeah, and maybe more if you're a bard.
Ooh. I need a bard.
Mm-hmm.
I think I want to try to find a bard in this game, if there is one.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm ready for that in my life.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. And then I recruited Minsk and Danni here, who are, like, in the next room.
I think Garrick is a bard, right?
He is, but I could not recruit him.
Oh, you weren't successful?
I tried to, yeah. It didn't work out.
He's just digging his bard gig, his, like, singing gig.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
I didn't really do much with that. I just talked to him, and he was, like, singing, and I was like, I'm not interested, and I walked away. Is there stuff going on there?
Yeah, he's, like, trying to impress the owner of the Elfsong Tavern, because I think he's in love with her.
Oh, he's crushing.
Mm-hmm, he's crushing. Bro.
He's all twisted up in the game.
Mm-hmm, bro. Garrick is crushing so hard, bro.
Aw.
But yeah.
I thought, well, maybe I would want to go buy stuff or, like, identify stuff that I hadn't even identified from, like, the Iron Throne, right? I haven't had the opportunity to identify anything because I can't do that by myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at my inventory, I got no money.
Yeah, there is no money there. I also realized that because I had, like, 36,000 gold.
I had an ungodly amount of gold.
So what did you do with that?
Well, if you look in your quest journal, there's like, oh, the treasurer downstairs has all your money. Like, you know, we've gotten so rich that you don't have like cash on you. It's all like locked up in, you know, Hamlet somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Or like shipping trading costers, that kind of stuff. So you can go down and like ask this money manager, hey, can I just see it? Can I see it? Can I look at it a little bit?
I want to swim around it like I'm Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah, and he like very like surprisingly openly admits that he lost it all on a dog race.
That dude says that immediately. Like he does not need to be pressured at all.
This guy can't have this job. Like it's just the first thing you learn in money management is the ability to lie. Like it's a prerequisite.
I like that you think that's the first thing you learned as opposed to don't gamble with the money you manage. How is that not the first thing you learn?
Well, look, you have to do that. The successful ones, you got to do that. You just got to, when you lose, you got to be able to lie about it.
Yeah, I saw The Big Short. I know.
Yeah.
Get your politics out of my game.
Look, generally speaking, we don't talk about politics. This is going to fucking date the podcast. We're all like in a weird place. No one expected a few years ago that Jill Stein would be president, but sometimes you just got to move forward.
Yeah, we joked quite a bit earlier in this podcast
about the grimdark Jill Stein future.
And lo and behold, we're in
the
Jill
Stein. Who knew
Stein.
You could win the Electoral College with like 1.4 million votes?
Well, you know what? You know who did?
Jill Stein.
Nate Silver. Anyway, so he runs out of money, and then he's like, all right, look, I can definitely get you this money.
Definitely.
I could definitely, bro, I've got this money. Like, I lost literally like a country's worth of wealth on a dog race. This is like, like betting the entirety of Wall Street on a dog race.
And that's the thing. It's like, in order to even lose that amount of money, somebody else has to be on the other side of those bets. Who is so wealthy in Baldur's Gate that they bet on another dog? Like, who was wealthy enough to even collect that amount of money?
Timora. Dang, that would be such a good side quest, though.
God, that would be a great whole game about Timora just being, like, locked up in all these gambling scandals and, like... Because you know the Lady Luck is about fixing events, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's... well, if you're into writing about Timora and her gambling, hit us up about that, too. But yeah, so he says, I'm going to get it for you. You go outside. He's out there. He got beat up. He went and got your money, and he got beat up.
Straight up mugged.
And I said, look, I'm going to go take care of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and did it. Did you go take care of it?
Yeah, I found the people responsible.
So talk about those guys. I am not happy with this quest design.
It's interesting. You go, and I think this is in one of the taverns. Is this Elf Song?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because this is the fancier one, and they're treating themselves to like a very fancy dinner. Mm-hmm. That was like a point made about it. So you go up, and there's a group of people, and I just saw that like 2 of them were named, and a lot of them were named refugee. And I talked about it, and they're having a big raucous time, and you can say, "Oh, you're having a fun time." And like the very next dialogue option, you can mention Oberlin or whatever his name was, the money manager. Mm-hmm. Be like, "Hey, do you know this guy?" And one of them says, "Oh boy, yeah, we do." And then he immediately gets shut up. So like it immediately confirms these are the people in game responsible for this, for the robbery. And you find out, one of the first things you find out, they do not have your money anymore. Your money is not accessible any longer. All of your money is gone. That's the first thing you find out.
Yeah.
They themselves like claim full responsibility. You find out that. They may show like a mild regret for having to beat up the guy. And then the third thing you find out is they claim they distributed the vast sums of your money, like most of it, to other refugees. And they're like spending the last bit of it on the meal that they are eating at that moment. Yeah. So those are the facts you learn. And what are your options when you're presented with those facts?
Oh, I would... So one is like, well, I get it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
2 is like, you really shouldn't have done that. That's bad. But there's 2 sides to every story. So okay. You should go turn yourselves in. And the third one's like, I'm going to murder you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so that's it. And I chose the second option.
You made them turn themselves in.
I was like, hey, you beat that dude up and stole literally a kingdom's worth of wealth from him.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you should turn yourselves in. And they were like, you know what? You're right. We're going to do the right thing. And they presumably went to turn themselves in to the Flaming Fist.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I'm not happy with the design of this quest.
What did you want?
I don't know what I wanted, but that like set of options at the end, and them being like, you know what, you're right. Justice is, like, we did a bad thing, even though it was for the greater good, and so therefore we're gonna turn ourselves in. Like, I felt like it was all very kind of pat. Like, it did not have it. You remember a few episodes ago, or maybe more than a few episodes ago, we talked about that there is a definite feel to the different types of quests in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
You remember some of them just feel like, we talked about like they feel generic or whatever, like classic fantasy kind of stuff, and there's the in-depth quests that are much more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like the former, where it was just like, all right, we got to have some kind of side quest here. This one kind of works. We need an excuse to strip all of the character, or to strip the player of all of their money, because that's important for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of design the item economy of this game. Like, I get why they did it.
Sure.
But, yeah, this just didn't feel like a very... I don't know.
Well, I think the issue is the dissonance between most of the time those traditional, like, low-effort fantasy quests were not social. They were go collect 5 Ankeg butts. And you went and you did that, and it was done. And the most of the really cool, interesting quests were socially based, like the chicken quest, right? Like turning that mage apprentice back into a person. And that felt cool because it was social. This is social, and it was like the entire quest is just mostly dialogue options and maybe a fight if you choose the last option of like, I know I'm going to murder you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the real issue is the believability of a bunch of people, desperate people, willing to turn themselves in to a fucking militia and rot in prison. Like, it's one thing to be a refugee. It is way better to not be a refugee in prison. Like, that is just not a politically realistic, like, sociologically realistic thing. If you are willing to, like, mug a man and beat him up, you are not going to, when you're confronted with your problem, you're going to get like, indignant and righteous, and you are not going to turn yourselves in. That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, maybe that was it, too, of being like, well, that was just a a nice little bow to wrap this whole thing up with. So yeah, like I feel like this game is doing interesting stuff. Maybe this is my real problem. The game is doing such interesting stuff by talking about a refugee crisis, right? And like this broad social context for all this stuff that's happening, and Kalar Argent with some people who really love her and some people that don't love her and some people who are afraid of her. And like the game is like actively trying to show this kind of push and pull of violence in the north of the Forgotten Realms. And then it's like, but the refugees are simple people who merely respond to like whatever arbitrary choice you make, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like there's a lot of interiority to those characters when it seems like it'd be fairly easy to give them an illusion of interiority.
Yeah, and I mean that is an interesting point, because if we're going to talk about the politics of this game, if this game came out in the last year, this is the height of a global refugee crisis that we have not seen since World War II, that we're all living amongst. And it's one thing to like want to depict that and want to like get people like tuned into it, right? Like, hey, refugees, this is a thing. I think when you do that, you need to portray people with a little bit more care in terms of like how they're realistically going to respond to like gross inequity and the opportunity to live in a new place that's very unwelcoming. Like, we've already been shown that the Flaming Fist are like abusive to refugees and are like practically beating them to keep them out of the ducal palace.
You gotta keep it safe.
And you're going to tell me that refugees are just going to turn themselves into those people.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing. Did you talk to the Flaming Fist people who were having the altercation outside of the Elfsong Tavern?
I don't believe so.
So you can talk to them. It's like there was like a guy on the ground, kind of in like the fetal position animation. And so I walked up and I was like, "What's going on?" And the refugees are like, "Hey, the Flaming Fist are like really giving us shit here." And the Flaming Fist are like, "We need reinforcements. Like we cannot keep order this way." And so they're like, "Will you please go back to the Flaming Fist and get reinforcements for us?" And you can just say no. You can be like, "I'm not going to do that for you." And you can kind of like push back against the Flaming Fist, but the quest just kind of ends there. It doesn't push any further. But I do think that's an instance of being able to be like, oh, you know what? In this like weird fantasy city, right? That doesn't have like, it's not a modern nation state. Like, what is the claim to like property and existence and against the state, and like what does that mean? There's also the refugee house. Did you do that side quest?
No. So that was in the Iron Throne, right?
No, it was right outside of the Ducal Palace.
Okay. No.
So it's a similar kind of thing. There's this person who's like, I'm opening my home to all the refugees, and there's a refugee standing there, and he's like, this person lets you into their house and then takes everything you own and then lets you sleep there. And some people don't even get to sleep there. And it's this kind of thing. And so, and this is actually an interesting quest, I think. You can be like, hey, this is bad. I don't like it. And then the person's like, well, you know, tough, deal with it. The person who owns the house, this like refugee hotel kind of scenario. So you can either go to the Elfsong Tavern and get more supplies so that they can feed more people there and like make it a better location.
Like it's a safe house, basically, is what you're...
Kind of, but where they're taking everyone's money to support it.
Wait, who's taking whose money?
The owner of the house. So he says, refugees come in. I need all of your possessions so that I can afford to feed and house you. And so
there's like almost a trafficking angle here.
Yeah, there's like the shakedown kind of operation. So you can either go to the Elfsong Tavern and get them to donate or give them some stuff. Like I didn't do that part, but that's what it says. Like the quest options. Or you can go to the Flaming Fist and you can report them for taking advantage of refugees.
Yeah.
And so, and like the quest gets rough. So
I think one thing we're picking up on here is there's a lot more outcomes that are not like in BG1, where it is just a black and white good evil type situation, right?
Yeah, there's a lot more like
morally ambiguous stuff going on.
Well, not even just morally ambiguous, but it's just a bigger tree. Like if we think of these decision trees as kind of branching up into more possible outcomes, it's just bigger.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's more room in the middle between objectively evil and objectively good.
Well, speaking back to the money side quest, Balthazar was in a real bind here.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is like the vengeance angle of you took my money, right? But he can't get the money back.
Yeah, there's nothing.
The
to do.
money's gone. Like, that's already been established. I just let him go.
Dang.
I'm just like, okay, I'm just walking away from it. I think Balthazar's like getting a little bit more stoic and being like, look, the things outside of my control, I'm going to let go.
Maybe this is because of his increased like lack of power in the world. Like he's not the murder machine he once was.
Just due to game balance and such. Yeah,
wonder.
and like the overall level of everything increasing, and just like realizing I don't need to pick every single fight. It's also probably a lingering effect of the end of Baldur's Gate 1 where he was not collecting experience anymore. Mm-hmm. Like he's only just getting experience again.
He also slew a demon prince.
Yeah.
You probably don't have a lot to prove after that.
2 of them, a demon knight and an actual like greater demon. They were kind of just unrelated, but back to back somehow.
But this refugee house quest, so you can get more supplies, or you can go report them to the Flaming Fist, and I reported them to the Flaming Fist, and there's this long conversation you have, long for Baldur's Gate, where the Flaming Fist guy's like, all right, so you're telling me that they're not hurting refugees, and you're like, no. And he's like, well, they don't really have any protections here. Nothing they're doing is illegal, so we can't do anything. But you can make up a story that they're murdering the people, that they're murdering refugees. And that's what I did.
You made up the story.
I just wanted to see what happened, yeah. And so like I was like, you know what, though? I heard that this person who owns this house is murdering refugees. And I went back, and then the Flaming Fist showed up and arrested them. And then the refugees took over the house.
Well, is that the good ending, I guess? Like, if the refugees take over the house, is the house going to, like, do better to serve the refugees and not shake them down?
I don't know. I didn't feel good about that, but I was very curious about what would happen. So that's why I did it. You have to assume that getting supplies and making sure they get to refugees is the best ending.
Yeah.
This seemed like the shortcut kind of way to do it.
But in order to do that, you had to lie to representatives of the state.
And then get someone, like, put in prison.
Yeah.
Which did not feel good.
There was a... Yeah, there were people, like, being kept in the Ducal Palace, right? Like, the prison at the basement of the Ducal Palace?
Mm-hmm. Corlaz was down there for me.
Well, she's a corpse in her own family tomb, fittingly for me.
Well, she when I went downstairs, she broke out of prison, and I had to kill her.
Well, I feel like, have you learned your lesson?
Oh, I learned the lesson that Baldur's Gate wanted me to kill that one character for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Probably
you
so
haven't learned, like, the
back.
greater lesson of you should probably just kill very dangerous people.
Smite thine enemies.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, it's just about, like, pragmatism, right? Like, this person's just gonna break out, right? It's the Batman. Like, it's the like mistake he continues to make.
Mm-hmm. I will say, I'm not convinced by that, but I will say that Baldur's Gate is directly teaching us that lesson.
Yeah,
I think that's inarguable.
Mm-hmm.
So
there was also I went around and there was somebody behind one of the doors, and they're like, help me. And I was like, who are you? And they said, I'm a member of the Flaming Fist, and a fucking doppelganger blocked me in here, took my identity.
Jeez.
And you can go get a key, and you can open it up, and they say, oh my gosh, thanks, I got to go report to my superior. And they're very evasive when you try to ask them anything, and they'll, like, disengage and start walking away, and then you can try to talk to them again. How did you handle that? Did you see that person?
I did. I just let them go.
Yeah, if you talk to them 3 times, they turn into a doppelganger and attack you.
So, I guess my logic there was I did just see a mage escape. Mm-hmm. So maybe they were locked in there. I just let them go. Oh, I will say Corlaz, when she escaped her little prison in the basement area of the Ducal Palace, she said, I got tortured. And I was like, oh, shit. And she was like, I cannot, I knew it would be bad, but I had no idea it would be this bad. And so that's why she's broken out. So after the fight happened and everything, I went and looked in her cell, and there's a little, like, question mark with a question with a clicky thing where you can, like, get additional info. And yes, they were torturing her.
Like, what information did you get? What was the actual information?
It says something like there was like a bloody and violent torturing. They didn't say the word torture, but altercation or something, and it has just now ended. Like it'll be in the video. So did you get the spectacles of spectacularation?
Are you talking about the green ones?
What are they called? Spectacles of spectacle is literally what they're called.
Spectacles of spectacle?
Yeah. Did you
So
get
yeah,
those?
there was a burnout in a tavern.
Oh man, did you actually pay attention to what this burnout dude says?
Yeah, and he was fully voice acted.
Yeah. Well, a lot of NPCs in this are fully voice acted.
More
And
than the other one, yeah.
and I don't like that.
Okay, why not?
I feel bad because I don't like listening to them. Because I read quickly enough that I can like read much faster than they can read it to me. And I like reading it and kind of getting along, right? Like I don't really like waiting for that. So yeah, I feel very guilty clicking through like the effort that these people have made.
Yeah. Yeah, they seem very dangerous, and I did not use them.
So he's like, yeah, whoa, bro. Whoa, there's a cactus here, bro. That kind of thing.
He's talking about things like attacking him, like reaching out at him.
Yeah, so really interesting. You ask where he got them. And he's like kind of tripping out or whatever. And you ask where they got them. And he says, well, I got them from someone in Sigil. Do you know about Sigil?
Sigil is kind of the nexus of... the city of Sigil is the nexus of all the planes in the Forgotten Realms, basically.
Or in a bunch of different settings, because like everywhere attaches to it. And that's where
true.
Planescape takes place.
That's true. Yeah, so the city of Sigil is like you can get to any place you want from that place.
It's like the City of Doors? Is
It
that a
might
real
be.
thing?
I can't remember.
I don't know. That might be for something else. Anyway, so I thought that was a really interesting thing that that Sigil is a real place in the kind of D&D-averse, whatever that is. And we'll see some more of this kind of Sigil stuff in Baldur's Gate 2 at some point that I'm very excited about. So yeah, he gives you can say, hey, just give me these glasses that make you see all this weird stuff. And he says, okie dokie, and he gives them to you, and I put them on, and I could see like a thing running around, like a big globule, like an NPC globule. And I clicked on it, and it was like, you can summon this thing into the world to talk about it, or talk to it. And I clicked on the glasses, and I summoned it, and it was a fire elemental, and it was like, what the shit are you doing, bro?
The fire elemental said that?
Yes, it was super pissed off, and then it killed me. I thought this would be like a fun time thing, but it was not a fun time thing.
Was your whole party running around?
I only had 3 people at that time.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, it's a fire elemental. It just hit me like 2 times and I died.
Well, yeah, because you're a ticklevar, dude.
I was right up close to it too because I was talking to it. So yeah.
That's
my
just
story
not
with that.
Ticklevar's ideal distance between him and anything that means him ill.
But I do have them on, so hopefully like later in the game we're going to see lots of other weird stuff.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I can't take off my cool helm that like makes it impossible for me to fail morale saves.
Your
I got it in.
Magneto helmet.
I think I got it in Durlag's tower.
So what else? So what else occurred?
There's another side quest. I think one of the more disappointing ones compared to some of the ones you got to experience. A side quest where you can go to that magic shop that's a big colorful dome, and there's the fellow there who is who's just swamped. It's a gargantuan line of people because you've got. I like my reading of it was all of these refugees are coming in. You probably have a lot of privileged people, a lot of like relatively wealthier people in Baldur's Gate. There's like, well, we're getting out of here. We're going to like our estate down south, closer to right? So you got a huge line, and you try to talk to him. He's like, look, I'm so busy, and he recognizes you as the hero of Baldur's Gate, which is fun. Like, because when you talk to anybody that you met in the previous game, like at least the recruitable folks, they'll say, oh my gosh, and you have that chance to like acknowledge that you met them in the last game or not, in which case they recognize you, but only because they know you as the hero of Baldur's Gate. And he says, oh, could you go upstairs and grab some like potion bottles for me? I'd appreciate it. And when you go up there, a team of like 4 rapscallions teleport in, like a sorcerer, a gnoll, like a hobgoblin, and some other dude.
Oh, this is awesome. So it's like a monstrous adventuring party?
Yeah, it's a little monstrous adventuring party, and they think that I'm robbing the place too, and they say they've been like scanning it, and I say, you guys need to get out of here. You're not going to rob this place.
Mm-hmm.
And they attack me, and I just murder them. I murder them so hard.
Dang.
And I go back downstairs, and this is the payoff. Maybe there was something else I missed, but I give it back to him. He's like, oh, thanks, I'll sell you stuff now, because that was the quest you had to do in order to get me to sell you stuff. And I say, hey, there you had like some people break in. And he's like, oh, it must have been that other wizard. We're not on good terms.
Well, now you don't even have to worry about it anymore.
There you go. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. So
weird.
I had enough like gems and unusable scrolls that I could sell and then buy all of his potions of speed, because that is the new currency in the grimdark Jilstein future. It's only potions of speed.
Fantasy meth is the only currency.
Yeah, that's all that matters. All the gold in the world won't win you a fight. You know what will? Oil of speed wins you fights. I think I just got a lot of stuff identified that I needed to identify. So that was good, I guess. But yeah, that was kind of like my last stop. After I got that, I looked around and I realized, oh, well, most of this chapter is supposed to be getting the gang together, and that's just not what I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I got the gang together insofar as I got Minsk and Danni here and Boo, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to get T-Ax, who like believes he is a god, and it would not let me recruit T-Ax. So that's a bummer. And so, yeah, then I just kind of ended it. I was like, well, I'm sure they'll give me the ability to get other characters later. And so I just kind of went through it.
when you're ready to go, Imoen is recovered. You trigger the next stage of this game by going upstairs. Imoen's okay. And basically, you tell her she stays behind. Like, you can't recruit her. She's not recruitable, I don't believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, she just says no.
Mm-hmm. But before you're really able to talk to her, there is a hooded figure just talking to her. And this person's fully voice acted and has a little icon. Like, the only people in this game that have icons are recruitable characters, right?
Well, at least, I don't know.
Yeah.
Important like hyper important characters.
I guess, right? Did Saravok even have one, though?
Yeah, I think he did.
Okay, well,
if he doesn't now, certainly that was implemented in Baldur's Gate 2, because lots of important characters there have
true.
Things.
That's true. But anyway, it's a hooded figure that, from the dialogue, obviously knows about your lineage and your bloodline, which at this point in the game is still relatively a secret. Like, not everybody knows it.
Yeah, in just a minute we can talk about that, but yeah.
Yeah, totally. And kind of hints at that, and I got very annoyed with him, and he walked off. What was any difference there?
Yeah, basically the same. I was like, hey, bro, who are you? And he was like, I'm your friend. And I was like, are you sure? You sure you're my friend? And he was like, I'm definitely your friend. You have the blood of Baal in you.
How is it that you were able to defeat Saravok when so many others failed?
Yeah, so he was whatever. It was some mysterious shit.
Yeah. And his figure, his visage was, shadowed, was, obscured by his hood. So he's a hooded figure.
So after I did that, there's basically nothing else that happens there. And so I just told Corwin, who's like still running around with you, this like a flaming fist person. I was like, hey, we're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, all right, we're going to get our contingent together. We're going to march north to Dragonspear Castle, where the crusade is, hence Siege of Dragonspear. And so I was like, hey, I'm ready to go. And she said, great, we're going to go. And then there was kind of like this, like, getting ready to go zone. It's like right beside a gate. And so I could like talk to a guy and buy some stuff. And I like traded some things around with him. There's an ammo belt now, which is like a thing for arrows. That's really cool. So I bought an arrow belt or an ammo belt and a bunch of other stuff. Viconia was there, like to be recruited, and I said, Viconia, come on, you're in my party now. and it made she was with her own party that had like a mage and a dwarf warrior in it, and he was like super pissed off.
That you stole their cleric?
Yeah, he was like mega mad, and she was like, "No one owns me, dwarf."
Whoa,
Like,
that's
came with
cool.
me. Yeah, and we took a reputation hit, and I don't give a damn.
Yeah.
And then Duke Elton has a daughter named Ski, and she's
we were introduced to her a little earlier. We kind of neglected to mention her, but she's got a real high pitched voice.
she was in the end of when you're in the Ducal Palace in the first Baldur's Gate, you can meet her like sneaking around.
Okay.
And so, yeah, she's like, I'm going to go join the Flaming Fist and fight in the thing. And so Duke Elton, I talked to him, and he was like, yeah, please don't let my daughter get killed. That'd be very great.
But anyway, when we're in our bed for the last night, she comes and she's like, hey, guess what? I joined the Flaming Fist. Don't tell my dad. Mm-hmm. Okay, good night.
It's super strange. Also, she says the word daddy a million times, and I'm going to make a super cut of it.
Okay, great.
At
the end of this game, just like...
no, it's going to be its own video.
Okay. No, but at the end of the... Like, you'll get enough footage that you'll have every time she says daddy.
I hope it's not that many more times. Like, they really shoehorned it in there. But yeah, so then we just left, or I just left after that. And there's like a parade, and like
there's a big parade.
I'm legit impressed that they were able to animate a parade in the isometric engine of Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, but they got there.
And it looks like a parade. It's pretty good looking.
You meet Corwin's daughter.
Oh yeah, that's true. Corwin has a daughter. In order to humanize this new character that we've never met before, who's like kind of icy and cold. You know, she's like a warrior, like a strong, like emotionalist warrior, but she has a daughter. Mm-hmm. And so,
and you've got a lot
Corwin,
of dialogue options where you can be very disgusted at the idea of a little child, like a young human.
You can be like really rude to a child for no reason.
Yeah,
but yeah, Corwin, I'm calling it right now. Corwin will definitely die in this game.
Mm-hmm. Based on the fact that they humanized her like that, she's probably going to die in a scene where she sacrifices herself for the greater good, or to allow the protagonist to escape, something along those lines. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's just my bet here. That might not be true, but we'll see.
So yeah, we're marching out of Baldur's Gate in this parade, and some fucking Fourth Estate journalist asshole on the sidelines shouts to everybody, "Hey, guess what I know? I've read the documents. I've read the diary. Mm-hmm. Balthazar is Ballspawn. Balthazar is Saravok's half-brother. What say you?"
Did you know, do you know who gave them that information?
Who was that?
Gatey Links. You get it? Gatey Links?
Yep. Some jerk that's like in an Omnian embassy somewhere.
Oh. No, he's in Thay.
He's in Thay.
The Red Wizards got him.
But he yeah, it's a real problem.
Yeah, he's just taking documents and just throwing them out there, just making like 10 or 15 copies of every one of them.
So when you are given this, when you're confronted this way, Corwin tells you, like, you have a few options, and like I chose no, I'm gonna address this, and Corwin says this is probably a bad idea. That's all she says.
Yeah,
and then you get three options. The first is like a very much, hey, everybody, we need to unite together. We need to bring justice to these crusaders. We've got to right the world. Like it's very
some
much
William Wallace shit.
It's some real William Wallace stuff. There's like another option that's just there's another option where like, no, you're right. This is a bad idea. I'm not going to yell at this crowd right now.
Yeah, that's the one I chose.
And the other one is you just tell the truth. Yeah, I'm the son of Baal. But you know what? You need the son of Baal, because the son of Baal, the son of a god, is the only thing that's going to stop that jerk. And you need to like get with the program or get out of my way.
Yeah,
and I shouted that.
It begins with the blood of Baal courses through my veins.
Yes,
it's like some pretty like heavy metal album cover shit.
Yeah.
What did they say?
They booed me. They started booing me, but I yelled that. And Corwin said, I can't believe you just fucking did that. And then I said, well, look, you just can't. We can't continue to lie to these people, because if there's one thing that Balthazar, irrespective of like kind of the things he's gone through in this game, Balthazar does not lie to anyone.
Balthazar believes in the transparency of the executive branch, where the executive branch is the dukes of Baldur's Gate, plus extrajudicial single person party Balthazar.
But yeah, so I shouted, "I'm the ball spawn." The blood of ball courses through my veins. People booed at me, and that was the end of the chapter.
That's rad. Yep,
Yeah.
and that's where I stopped as well.
So we have a few notes here, kind of talking at the tail end of the episode about kind of the larger stuff going on in this chapter. Because I remember when I got the text from you, we were about to record, and you just texted me after you finished the chapter, and your text was, "What a weird game."
And I think we've gotten at some of that weirdness. It just kind of feels truncated and smaller than Baldur's Gate does normally. Like it feels like a much more kind of linear story-based experience instead of like an open worldy kind of experience.
Yeah.
And I think there's good things about that in some ways. Like this felt very cool, and there are big set pieces here.
Yeah.
Which there are just no set pieces in Baldur's Gate 1, so that's really cool. And by set piece, I mean like this is a scene that's designed to do one thing. So like a parade. There's no way to have a parade in the original Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
And this like chain of interactions. So that's cool. I'm also afraid that the rest of the game's just going to be a bunch of set pieces. And that doesn't really feel like Baldur's Gate to me.
Yeah, I mean that is the issue, right? And I felt like the first I got the sense of that is when I got to Baldur's Gate, and I was like, okay, Baldur's Gate is not the Baldur's Gate I remember. It is a tenth of the square footage, and like it's going to be jam packed with content, right? Yeah. And everything is like furthering the story, and even the side quests are just like they're just tight, and it's a curated experience that you're having. Yeah. And gone are the days of, I don't know what I'm doing in Baldur's Gate. I'm fucking wandering around lost in the dock quarter, and I don't know where I'm going, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there's something, I think, I'm worried that the rest of Siege of Dragonspear, and this is like my key concern, will be isometric Mass Effect, if that makes sense, rather than Baldur's Gate with additional kinds of content in it.
But here's like a larger question, and maybe we'll be better equipped to answer this at the end of the season.
Well, I hope we are.
Can you make Baldur's Gate in 2015? You know, like, can you get away with that kind of clunkiness? Because with what you're talking about, that absence of curation, that more open world, that dirtly bumbling around feeling, that I just don't think you can get away with it, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. It certainly is less appealing than like Mass Effect style set PC kind of stuff. Which I'm not saying, I'm not like making that comparison to criticize it. I think Mass Effect is a great series of games. I enjoy playing them, but they are different. And I get why you would do Siege of Dragonspear that way. I mean, after all, Mass Effect is what the original Baldur's Gate developers ended up doing, right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me. But I think that like the genre almost doesn't, like the genre of game, like we were talking about at the beginning, might not translate super well to isometric.
Or it may just be this particular cast of characters, this place is so strongly associated in our minds through nostalgia with a certain type of pace of game, a certain type of gameplay, that we are just rejecting this out of pure nostalgia. And we just need to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves.
Or we'll just wreck ourselves.
Or it just ends in a wreck irrespective. But yeah, no, I think that we kind of like hit all the notes there in terms of like weirdness. You do have like a much more streamlined experience, and you've also got some real differences when it comes to like moral ambiguity and maybe like way few like it seems like it's much harder to be like a very righteous paladin like character, but I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder. I wonder if. Yeah, I mean,
because neither of us are playing that. Ticklevar is just like a blind supporter of the state, and Balthazar is a Nietzschean Ubermensch type character.
Yeah.
Kind of frightening.
Well, we're going to find out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so next episode we will be playing through the next chapter, however much content that is. We don't really know. This was a good amount of content, I think. This took me about like an hour and 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was a good time. So yeah, like I said at the top of the episode, if you like this, please hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment. We love talking to people. We get really good comments on this show, and I'm really happy about that. I'm really appreciative of the people that listen to these episodes and engage with us. So thanks for that. And so yeah, the next episode will be out in 2 weeks.
We'll catch you then.
Do you have anything else you want to say?
Hey, just keep on keeping on, people. Stay strong.
All right. Well, put on your spectacles of speculation or whatever. You hippie. All right. Well, this was Mages and Murderdads.
Au revoir.
Daddy, 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 daddy.
So saith the wise Londo.